Most Linux devices look good in screenshots but absolutely fall apart when you try and use them. There's too much visual noise, there's inconsistent fonts, there's colors that clash, so on and so forth. The list goes on and on. It's endless, right? Today, I will be breaking down my most aesthetic Hyprland setup and every single design principle that makes it work. Setup follows three design principles, and those are visual hierarchy, color harmony, and intentional whitespace. So, visual hierarchy just basically means your eye knows where to look. The most important info stands out, and everything else in the setup that you see over here in the desktop, all of that supports it. Then color harmony just basically means nothing clashes. So every color relates to every other color. In Waybar, for example, you can see color harmony working in action. So the main components of the bar where you're going to most likely keep your eyes fixated are in a certain color, which is cyan in this case. So the time is going to be one of those things. So that is colored in cyan along with the workspace switcher. So in order for you to know which workspace you're on, I have chosen a cyan color for that as well. And not just that, but it also creates a sense of oneness with the entirety of the rest of the setup. Because look, if you have certain elements of, let's say, Waybar, for example, that are the same, you will know that they're meant to perform a certain function. So the function of these two modules in this case is for you to be able to keep track of what's going on with your setup, whether it be your workspaces or the time at a glance, which is why I've chosen these colors to be the ones that I'm using for the clock as well as the workspace switcher. That's one thing. Now, for the rest of the island modules, okay, the rest of the island modules over here, I've chosen different colors that would suit based on what function it's trying to represent again. So green is for battery. You always want to have that in green because chances are if you're plugged in almost all the time, you're going to be at a high level of battery, which just means that using green for that might just be better suited. You might also want to use a different color. Honestly, you can use any sort of color for the island modules if you have a bar like mine, and it would look good. Just in my case, I've chosen these particular colors because they mesh well with the rest of the setup. And they also mean that I can standardize the colors. So in case I wanted to switch between a theme, something like Rose Pine, which is what I'm currently using, if I wanted to switch the theme from that to something like Tokyo Night, because the colors are standardized and they're using one set of colors for the island modules, everything looks uniform, but just in a different theme. Then whitespace basically just means giving elements room to breathe. So cramped design creates visual stress. You don't want any of that, so I have plenty of white space over here. In fact, the entirety of the bar is based on this one principle alone, that is of white space. Now, traditionally, what you would do is back in the day, you would have plenty of polybars. So we used to be able to use polybar as our status bar on X environments. So that would be on BSPWM and i3, so on and so forth, right? We were using polybar as our bar over there. And the most common style of status bar was literally a bar, not island style modules like these. Basically, if you went on to r/unix point and then you looked at every other ICE, pretty much every other ICE was going to have a bar that was either stuck to the top or stuck to the bottom with all of the modules sprinkled on either side. The workspace is usually on the left, the media in the center, as well as the rest of the status modules on the right. The only thing about using a bar like that is that you're leaving a lot of ability to use whitespace effectively on the table, which just means you're not going to be able to see your wallpaper more, and it's kind of like you're using an Android device but then just stretched out to 1920 by 1080 or whatever your resolution is. So I decided to come up with something like this, something more of a dynamic, not quite dynamic island style, but a mix of material use aesthetic along with a touch of my own thing in order to create this bar over here. So those three are the principles that I'm using. Now I will tell you exactly how each principle plays out even further, okay? Now, as for the colors, I'm using a complementary color scheme. Now, as for the colors, I actually have something extremely fun and also very useful that I have set up. Now, if you remember earlier, I showed you this menu over here, which is one of the custom theme switcher, right? Where basically I have a bunch of different custom themes located inside of a folder and configured so that whenever I wanted to switch the theme from one theme to another, I could easily do so without having to click inside of every single application and changing the theme manually. So if you want to know what that works like, let me just show you here. Let's say I have a terminal open, for example, okay? We have a terminal open, and then we have a file manager open here, and let's see what else we can open, okay? Let's say we have, let's just keep these two open for now so you can see what I'm talking about. If I wanted to change the theme from Rose Pine, which it currently is, to something like Tokyo Night, I just have to select it from this menu, and I get a notification, after which the theme is immediately changed. And of course, if I wanted to switch the wallpaper, all I'd have to do is just pick out the wallpaper switcher, choose whichever wallpaper that I want, and then as you can see, voila, the wallpaper is also changed. Now that is what I'm doing for colors. Okay, great. But I still haven't explained why I'm using these particular colors, these particular themes, and not other ones. Well, the reason for that is because these themes are carefully, meticulously crafted in such a way that they're easy on the eyes. Now, especially Rose Pine, okay? This color scheme, ever since I found, well, not this wallpaper, but the clouds one, right? Ever since I found this wallpaper, along with this pool wallpaper, I practically fell in love with the theme, and so I'm just using this one. And not just that, but if I show you the code editor again, okay, if I show you VS Codium, as you can see here, the colors are in such a way that it's very, very easy in order to see what's going on. So I don't have to stress my eyes out. I don't have to put on glasses or anything like that in order to read code, okay, in order for me to distinguish between the different colors that are inside of the code editor. Okay, it's very simple. All I have to do is just basically look at the code and the code just jumps out at me. That's the best part of using themes like Rose Pine. Now, out of all of these pretty much 10 or so themes, I have a couple of favorites. And those favorites are going to be Rose Pine. After that, we have Tokyo Night, because this one looks extremely good as well. The colors are configured in such a way that whenever I'm looking at code, again, the code just happens to jump out at me. As you can see here, this looks extremely good as well. All of the elements that really deserve to be stood out, they do stand out. And same goes for another theme like Everforest. So my top three would have to be these three in the order that I've mentioned them. That is what I do for colors. Now, instead of picking one color scheme, and then sticking to that, which becomes very, very boring after some time, trust me. In fact, I did just that for around 1 or 2 years as I first started writing. I've been writing for over 4 years now. But yeah, as soon as I just picked one theme and then decided to stick to it, I felt that I was just changing themes way too much. And so instead of doing that, I decided to create a custom theme switcher so that I can basically switch the theme to whichever one that I want, my favorites, whenever I wanted to do so. And by the way, if you want to learn how to make something like this yourself, I teach you exactly how to do this step by step using a very simple framework that you can follow, even if you've literally never written Hyprland before. That's right. You can literally make wallpaper switchers like this one, along with custom theme switchers like this one, even if you don't have that much experience with Hyprland. Now, I've been writing for over 4 years, and I've been writing Hyprland practically ever since it came out, which is about 3 years now. So I can pretty much say that I have an idea or two as to what I'm doing. So if you want to learn from an expert who's already done this, who's been doing this for years, right, you can go ahead, click the first link in the description and check out the program. In fact, let me just show you what the program contains. So here is Hyper Accelerator, which is the program. That's the first link. So if I scroll down inside of the system reforging section, here we just scroll down. This is over 10 hours of content, by the way, from Genesis, which basically shows you step by step how to get started with installing this stuff, installing Arch, installing Hyprland, specifically on Arch, all of that stuff, along with, of course, the customization part itself. If we go down to the theme switchers module, this is exactly where I show you how you're going to implement this custom theme switcher, along with a wallpaper-based theme switcher as well. So it's a 2-hour-long module, which took me way goddamn longer than 2 hours to create, right? I had to spend weeks just trying to record this module and putting it together just so that you got the best experience. But yeah, this is a 2-hour-long module where I cover all of this custom theme switcher stuff. And if you also wanted to know how to get the rest of this, like this notification daemon here, along with the logout menu, as well as the lock screen, all of the parts which make a desktop environment, right? I teach you how to do that inside of Desktop Dynamism over here. So if you want to learn how to make something like this yourself, not just monkey see, monkey do, copy somebody else's dot files, okay, change a couple of colors, hope and pray to God that it actually works. If you want to avoid all of that, if you want to learn how to do this yourself, learn a skill and actually be proud of your own setup, your own creation that you have made with your own two hands, if you want that, you can go ahead, click the first link and check out Hyperaccelerator. Now that is for the colors part. The colors, as I've already mentioned, I choose whichever ones that I like from here. That way I'm not locked into one color decision. And here's another thing that I've noticed. As I keep coding for quite some time, right, for hours, what happens is the colors, they stop standing out. So best thing for me to do at that time is to either change the theme or go out for a walk and come back, which I do both, and it definitely helps out quite a lot. The colors, once again, they start to really show, as in they start to show themselves and jump out at me like they once did as I first got started. Next thing is typography and spacing, okay? So font choices, they matter more than people realize. Here, I'm using only 2 fonts total, not 5, not 10, not 3, no, just 2. And those 2 fonts are going to be SF Pro Text, which is the main font that I'm using. This font, it looks absolutely fantastic, right? That not much more needs to be said. There are other fonts that might seem to look a little bit better, but nothing even comes close to SF Pro Text with a little bit of, what do you call it? A little bit of optimization. And that optimization is so simple, you could get it done in pretty much under 5 seconds. So the only thing that I've done in order to make this font look better, by the way, you can use this for any other font, is to just go inside of config, okay, config, font config. Font config is actually a little bit different, but here we're going to be changing GTK settings. So you want to go into config GTK 3.0, and here you want to go inside gtk.css. So once you do, okay, here are all of the different colors that are currently being used, so on and so forth. All of that I teach you how to configure, by the way, in Hyperaccelerator. But the main thing that you're looking at over here is the font weight. So you want to increase the font weight to something like 500. It doesn't work if you select it here, okay? It doesn't work if you select SF Pro Text Medium. Over here, it only shows you the preview, but then when you actually try and select it, the font weight is not going to be appropriately selected. Now, for whatever reason, this is probably a bug with GTK3 or GTK4. Whatever the reason is, we don't care. Okay, all we need is for the font weight to be increased so that we can get our fonts to look better. And how you do that is by going into your gtk.css file, selecting everything. So this is the universal selector, selects every single element here, every single text element, every single element, basically. And then it just changes the font weight to 500. And as soon as you do this, okay, as soon as you save the file, as soon as you log out, log back in, you close your GTK apps, you reopen them, bro, the difference is just, it's insane, especially with SF Pro Text. Because, okay, let me show you what it looks like if I don't add in this thing. So let's go into gtk.css. Here, let's say I remove this part, okay? And then let's say I close and then I reopen NWG look. Like, it just looks like frail. Frail is the best way in order to describe this. The font just looks frail. The font looks like I can snap it in half and it just doesn't look that good. Now, watch what happens as I restore the font weight and then I open this again. Okay, let's open NWG look so you can see the exact same thing. There you go. The font actually looks like it has some meat that can support it so that it looks much better. So that is what I do for fonts. That is one font that I use. Apart from that, the only other font that I use, I mentioned 2 earlier, right? The only other font is going to be the monospaced font, which is Geist Mono Nerd font. So that's the font that I'm using. If I go to config kitty in order to show you the font, yeah, it's Geist Mono Nerd font mono. And if you're wondering what this mono is all about at the end of nerd fonts, it's basically a nerd font variant, okay? So this took me quite a long time to figure out, but anyway, nerd fonts, they have a couple of different variants. So you have normal nerd fonts, you have nerd font propo, and then you have nerd font mono. Now, propo is meant to be used in proportional context. So whatever you see here, the waybar, for example, because I'm using a sans serif font, okay, basically any UI text that you see here, any UI text is sans serif. So this is a sans serif font along with this one, SF Pro Text, Rubik, Manrope, all of those fonts, they are sans serif. A serif font would probably be something like the ones that you would see in textbooks or in newspapers. They're the ones that seem a little bit more fancy and old school kind of thing. Monospaced fonts are, of course, the fonts that you're most likely to use in your terminal. Now, where am I getting at with this? Basically, if you want your icons to display properly inside of Waybar so that the spacing between the icons and the offset are all perfectly fine, you're supposed to use the propo variant because the rest of the Waybar is in a proportional context, which basically means you're just using a sans serif font. Now here, inside of the terminal, it's best if I just show it to you. So let's remove this mono thing and then let me open niche. There you go. The icons, they don't seem to line up perfectly, right? Some icons are bigger, some icons are smaller, they just don't line up perfectly. Now, watch what happens when I change the font to Nerd Font Mono, and then I reload. Like, as you can see, immediately, all of the terminal icons, they just line up perfectly, and everything looks good. That's it. So that is why I use Geist Mono Nerd Font Mono. I used to use JetBrains Mono Nerd Font before, but then it's just so overused. It looks good. It looks good and all that. Definitely looks good. The anti-aliasing is perfect, especially when you use it with the Kitty terminal. I've made a video covering why Kitty's font rendering is just straight up better. But anyway, that font is just way too overused and I don't like it anymore, so I use Geist Mono instead. Okay, next thing is the layout and the composition. So Waybar is at the top over here. Okay, we've got centered modules, we've got island style modules, so that things look symmetrical and balance is created. And your brain, it likes balance. So that is what I've got going on over here. There's another module that I can add, which is going to be the Pac-Man updates module, but I just left that out for now because as you can see, there's the media module over here. So this media module, if any song is playing, it's going to display over here. And depending on the length of the song's title, of course, that's going to change. The length of the module is going to change. So I just leave that here because with most songs whose names are not too long, this makes the bar look symmetrical as hell. Anyway, next thing is the windows, right? So as for windows, I use a certain amount of gap. So let me show you what that amount of gap is. So it's in modules, decoration, showcase 2. And by the way, if you're wondering what this modules folder is about, it's basically taking one file and then splitting it into multiple files, which just makes maintenance so much easier and you don't have to break your head diving into one file, just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, basically breaking your scroll wheel, just looking through the file itself, trying to find what you need. Of course, this too, I cover inside of Hyperaccelerator, inside of the finishing touches part of the program. So here, inside of anti-fragile modularity, I show you why make things modular, the apps that we can, and how to actually go about doing that. Then we can just go into showcase. And as for the gaps, I use 18 for the gaps out and 9 for the gaps in. Exactly half. The reason why is because this, okay, just watch what happens when I turn this to 18. It becomes too much. And on the outside is the gaps, which are half of the inside, and it just looks weird. So you don't want this, which is why gaps in is half of gaps out, so that you have even spacing around each of the borders, around each of the border corners. So that is for gaps, and not just that, but as for the actual layout that I use, I'm currently using the scrolling layout. Now the scrolling layout is actually very, very intuitive once you get used to it. Now think about it. Chances are you're probably going to have opened more than one browser window in your life, right? Now, because I'm currently using this icon in order to represent the browser workspace, okay? Chances are I'm going to have to open more than one browser window. But what happens in a normal layout, like scrolling, not scrolling, but actually master and stack layout, is your browser size is limited. So you can only have one browser that's half the width or one that's 60%, 40%, whatever it is. Now, with the scrolling layout, on the other hand, you can open as many browser windows as you want, and it doesn't matter because you can adjust the width independently. That's what makes it so fun and just so much nicer to use compared to something like master and stack or dwindle. That is what I do for the layout. Okay, we need to talk about animations, because the way that I've configured these animations over here, especially this Overwatch panel, once I got it right, oh my goodness, this was just absolutely fantastic. I could just keep opening this all day, every day, and I could just keep staring at this. And not just that, but then also for this one as well, for this layer, which is going to be Rafi. So this animation is also really well done, along with, of course, the normal window animation like that you see over here, along with the workspace switching animation. Now, what I've done here, if I go to the animations part, so you can check that out, animations, we're going to pick, this one is Riverine, I believe. Let's see which one it is. Animations.conf. Okay, so Riverine horizontal. That's what I called it. So let's go here, Riverine horizontal. There you go. Now, the animations that I'm using over here, they're not linear, they're not cubic, they're not any of the other Beziers. In fact, they're just custom Beziers. Now, the reason why I use these animations instead of the default ones is, one, they just look so much better. They add more depth to using Hyprland than if you just used the plain old animations that they give you by default that just lack depth, right? So instead of that, I use these Bezier curves over here for the different windows as well. So for windows, we have windows in, that's going to be the deceleration, MD3 decel right here. That's going to slide in. And for windows out, that's going to go like this, pop in 60%, So when I open a window, it's going to slide in, but when I close it, it's not going to slide out. It's just going to pop out. And same goes for the layers. So layers in, this is going to be layer in animation. That's layer out. Fade layers in. So in case a layer is fading in, that's going to use menu decel and menu accel respectively. And of course, the different workspace switching animations as well. And there's also fade. So anytime there's a fade effect to be seen inside of the compositor, that is going to be using MD3 decel. So that is what I do for animations. It's not linear, but it's in fact a custom Bezier curve that I've cooked up. Last thing is consistency. So if you've noticed, right, every element here follows the same design system. So it uses the same fonts, the same colors, same spacing, same animation timing, so on and so forth. And this is what makes it aesthetic. It's not any one choice, okay? But it's how every choice supports every other choice. It's a system and not just a collection of cool things, which is especially made clear when you take a look at the custom theme switcher again. So let me show you this so you can see how it works in action when you're using it in terms of a normal workflow. So this might be something that you're going to be dealing with, okay? You have a code editor, you have your file manager over here, and then you also have a terminal. Let's say you're just trying to install applications or trying to install something like Rust and Go or something like that, okay? Now, if I change the theme to something like Cappuccino, it's practically literally just instant. It's so lightning fast. It's so blazing fast. It's amazing. It's genuinely amazing. And not just that, but if you wanted to create more contrast all of a sudden, whether you wanted to switch to a light themed wallpaper in order to create more contrast between the windows and the wallpaper itself, or if you wanted something more minimal, you can do that with just the press of a button. And that is what makes this setup aesthetic. It's, I honestly don't have enough words in order to describe just what I've created over here. I know, it seems like I'm bragging, humble bragging, whatever it is, but honestly, this has to be one of the best creations that I've ever made. And not just that, but I teach you how to make something like this yourself. So that way you can feel as proud as I do about my own creation, about yours. And that's it. If you want to learn how to design Hyprland setups with this level of intentionality, understanding colors, color theory, typography, visual hierarchy, all of that stuff, you can go ahead, check out Hyper Accelerator. And as a bonus, I've also included a module, where basically I cover what mental models are, which are ways, okay, mental tools that you can keep in your toolbox that basically prevent you from ever running into issues when writing Hyprland. Now, the way that this is done is by preventing the issues from happening in the first place. Little tidbit from the module itself for you. But yeah, if you liked the video, hit like. If you loved it and want to see more like this in your feed, hit subscribe, and I will see you next time. Stay racing. Mwah.